Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. You are not born into this moment. You wake into it as if a dream replaced your own memories with someone else's life, soft and unremarkable. The room around you is simple. Tatami mats, bamboo blind, a sliding door slightly ajar. Crickets still whisper from the edge of dawn. And in the distance, the city stirs like a tired beast groaning quietly before it stands. Outside, Hiroshima stretches its back. It is 8:13 in the morning. You are barefoot sitting up on a thin futon that still holds another person's shape. A kettle has gone cold on the stove. You can hear someone sweeping outside the window and the gentle rustle of laundry being shaken out and pinned by fingers too accustomed to routine to notice the thickness in the air. The sunlight is strange, not wrong, just heavy. A faint yellow tint hangs on every surface like the world has been varnished. You feel it on your skin, not warm but weighty, like breath on the back of your neck when no one is there. The silence is honest. There are no sirens, no warnings. Hiroshima is by all visible signs safe, but you feel something underneath. An absence like someone has quietly removed the future from the room. You rise slowly, as if not to disturb whatever lies under the floor. Someone has left a radio playing very softly in another room, a singer's voice trembling on a high note, cut with static. You walk toward it. The dial glows faintly. It is tuned to a station that won't survive the next half hour. The family whose home you've woken in, maybe they are yours, maybe not, is elsewhere. Bowls are set out, chopsticks aligned, shoes left neatly by the door. Everything feels recently touched, but empty. In the distance, a child laughs. It's the kind of laugh that only happens when a teacher steps out of the classroom and the students momentarily forget the world is dangerous. It's a beautiful, careless sound. You step into the hallway. A calendar flaps in the breeze from the half-open door. August 6th. A red circle drawn around the date in pencil. No note, just a mark. You touch the frame of the doorway and realize your hand is trembling, not with fear, but with something stranger recognition, as if this moment has already passed through you once before in another life. You notice the dust, fine, unmoving, clinging to the corners as if gravity has gone numb. The kind of dust that settles just before something leaves. Outside, a neighbor calls good morning to someone across the alley. A cat watches from a rooftop. Eyes unmoving, tail curled tightly. It does not blink. The strange thing, the funny thing is how orderly everything feels. Hiroshima is clean. Unlike Tokyo or Osaka, its streets are intact. There are no scars from the war here. That's why they call it the City of Peace. A cruel nickname, but no one knows that yet. You hear a rumor in the air, though no one says it aloud. We are safe because we are not important. Historians still wonder whether that belief, that naive, dangerous belief, was the reason people stayed. You pick up a photo from a side table. A family, smiling, not pose caught in the act of living. A girl mid-blink, a father laughing with his mouth too wide. You stare into their lives for a moment. The sun was behind them. That sun will not rise again. As you return the frame, you notice something carved into the wall, barely visible. A date maybe, a name. The wood is worn around it, as if someone used to trace it every morning before leaving the house. The kettle whistles again, but no one is there to stop it, and you do not move. The city outside grows brighter. Laundry dances on balconies. A man pedals past, on a bicycle, 2 loaves of bread in his basket. A woman picks vegetables from a narrow garden, brushing dirt from a single potato. like it might bruise. You wonder what time it is now. The radio cuts out. A whisper of static, then nothing. The voice is gone. And yet the silence feels deeper. You are still not afraid. You are something worse aware. Your stomach knots, but not from hunger. It's the kind of tension animals feel before a thunderclap. The hair on your arms stiffens. Something is watching, and it is far above you. This moment, this gentle unraveling calm, is the last of its kind. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep. It's best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time and if you're still awake at the end. Now exhale and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. Outside the city blinks in the sunlight and you feel the sky leaning down. You step outside. The air tastes clean in a way that almost feels suspicious. There's a crispness to it, like the moment before thunder, before something breaks the sky open. But there are no clouds. Just a dull blue canvas smudged faintly at the edges, as if the morning were painted in haste. The street is alive but not loud. A child kicks a ball near a row of bicycles. Two schoolboys in caps walk past, slapping each other's shoulders with exaggerated glee. A woman wearing gloves hangs a futon to air out her face, calm, indifferent to the weight of the sun. You nod to a man selling pickled vegetables from a cart. He nods back, one hand still wiping condensation from a jar of daikon. His other hand is missing two fingers. You don't ask why. Here no one needs to. You begin to walk. There's no destination, only movement. Your feet seem to know these roads even if your memory doesn't. You turn corners instinctively. You pass a tram station. It's working. That in itself is strange. Trains have grown rare elsewhere in wartime Japan, but here they still run on time. There's a small clock above the ticket booth. It says 8:16. It will never say anything else again. You walk on. Past a school, past an old woman sweeping dust off her steps, as if that act might keep the world from ending. She hums to herself a song about the sea, or maybe about loss. It's hard to tell, and she doesn't notice you. Somewhere a bell rings. You turn. It's a group of girls, probably 13 or 14, gathered outside the fuel ration office. They're laughing, not nervously, not dramatically, just simply laughing. One of them has drawn a moustache on her upper lip with charcoal. The others are giggling so hard they nearly drop their buckets. They are here because the government assigned them to demolish wooden houses, clearing fire breaks in case of air raids. They use picks and hammers. Their hands bleed. But this morning they laugh. One of the girls catches your eye. She makes a face, something between a grimace and a grin. Then she turns and you never see her again. Historians still wonder whether the fire break plan ever served a purpose, whether those forced to tear down their own neighborhoods were sacrificed for nothing. You turn into a side street. There's a smell you didn't notice before, sweet, metallic, faintly floral. It comes from the paper mill nearby where men stack wet pulp into sheets like rice cakes. The scent lingers too long, clings to your tongue. And then you pass a barber shop. Inside, a man is trimming a customer's hair with meticulous care. The man in the chair has his eyes closed. He looks almost asleep, trusting the world to hold still around him. You keep walking. A narrow bridge ahead. You step onto it. The river below is low, quiet, brown at the edges. Something moves under the surface, maybe a fish, maybe just the current trying to shift shape before it's boiled. You pause halfway across. Here's the funny truth, someone just downstream is doing laundry in the river. She hums to herself, then pauses to rub a stain from a boy's shirt. She believes she will get it out in time. A man next to her smokes a cigarette. He flicks the ash into the water and doesn't speak. Their backs are turned to you. They will never know how close they came to surviving. A sudden gust lifts your sleeve. You glance skyward. The sky is still blue, empty. No one is looking up. That is the most chilling fact, not that death is coming, but that it is invisible, and no one is looking in the right direction. A dog barks behind you, not in fear, just habit. He's tied to a post outside a tailor's shop. His leash is red. His ears twitch. He won't break free. You walk on. Now you're in the heart of the city. A small square with flower boxes, red geraniums, white azaleas. A man tends them carefully, clipping one bloom to place in a vase. He does this every morning for his late wife. He believes she sees it. The streetcar passes behind you. The operator waves to someone on the curb. A moment human and trivial. A moment no one will record, because what follows will erase the mundane in favor of the monstrous. You stop walking. There's a strange weight in your chest, like the future has sunk just beneath your ribs. Not panic. Something worse pre-memory. You're remembering something that hasn't happened yet. Every sound feels louder. A bike bell, a shout, the crack of wooden sandals on stone. And you notice something subtle, something easy to miss. Every shadow is slightly off, just a little too long, too sharp, as if the sun is straining, like it's being pulled downward. You stand still. Somewhere a camera clicks, a man photographing the dome. He's trying to get the perfect shot. He never develops the film. The image remains locked inside the camera, forever blackened by what's to come. The river smells stronger now, and the clock, the one above the post office, ticks forward one last time. You don't hear it stop, but you feel it. You tilt your head. There it is again, a sound that doesn't belong. Not quite thunder, not wind. It's too distant, too mechanical. A dull hum, slow and circular like a blade slicing the sky. You feel it in your teeth before you hear it in your ears. Above the city, something is moving. You're not the only one who notices. A man standing at a market stall shades his eyes. A child on a balcony stops mid-sentence. A teacher in a classroom lifts her chin just slightly. But no one runs. Why would they? It's just a plane. Planes pass over Hiroshima all the time. Reconnaissance flights, sometimes fighters, but never bombing raids. The citizens have grown used to the pattern. There are always warnings before something serious. Sirens, leaflets, rumors. Today, there has been nothing. They've all heard the same quiet assurance: Hiroshima is not a target. Too many shrines, too many civilians, too little military value. So they don't run. Even now, as the hum grows louder, you look up. The plane is small, alone. Silver in the morning light, drifting like a dragonfly, too high to seem threatening. Some pause to watch it. Others dismiss it. A few barely notice at all. The American military later admits this was intentional: one plane, one shadow, to keep the city calm until the very last second. The Enola Gay flies alone, and no one imagines it carries a weapon meant for erasure. Historians still argue whether its flight path was altered at the last minute, or whether the crew always meant for the bomb to fall, where it did not just on a city, but on its heart. The woman who had been picking vegetables now wipes her forehead and walks inside. She doesn't see the plane. The man with the bicycle unloads his bread, brushing off imaginary crumbs. The teacher adjusts her glasses, squints out the window, and tells the students to return to their seats. You walk faster now, not because you know, but because your body does. You turn down an alley. Your foot brushes against something, a fan fallen on the stone path. Someone must have dropped it, painted with cranes. The paper is torn. You pick it up. The sound overhead deepens a tone so low it nearly escapes your hearing. Your breath catches. The fan flutters in your hand, and then silence. Not ordinary silence, but the kind that absorbs everything. No footfalls, no carts, no wind. The city holds its breath. At exactly 8:15 a.m., the bomb bay doors open, and for a brief moment, a small metal shape begins its fall. No one sees it. It spins gently, slower than you'd expect. There's no flash yet, just descent. You still carry the fan. Nearby, a street vendor looks up, frowns, and opens his mouth to speak. But before he can form a word, the world changes. You don't see the explosion, not at first. You feel your skin trying to leave your bones. You feel your lungs collapse inward. The fan in your hand disintegrates without burning. And then only then does the light arrive. It does not glow. It devours. A dome of white swallows the city in an instant. Not fire, not heat, something else. Something brighter than anything on earth has the right to be. Everything becomes shadow and ash. The funny truth, some survivors claim they heard music in the light. Not screaming, not shouting, but a strange high note like a flute drawn across glass. It may not be true, but you hear it too. Your vision fractures, walls vanish, skin blackens. The air becomes solid for half a breath, and then it moves faster than wind, faster than thought. A pressure wave follows, tearing roofs from buildings, flesh from faces, childhoods from memory. But you do not die, not yet. You are hurled backward not by fire but by absence, by the sudden removal of air, of time, of structure. You land somewhere, maybe a street, maybe a riverbank. Your ears ring, blood trickles from your nose. You blink and blink, but the world stays white. It takes nearly a minute for the fire to begin. Not the initial flash that was light, not flame, but the fires that follow. Wood ignites, paper, hair, breath. The city burns not from one bomb, but from thousands of small secondary deaths. You try to rise, your hands don't respond. Your mouth is full of dust, or ash, or teeth. You do not cry. No one cries. Crying would mean breath. You hear a groan nearby. Someone calling a name over and over, the same syllables, uncertain, then angry, then fading. The brightness begins to fade, and as it does, you realize the city is gone. Not ruined, not broken. Gone. Buildings that stood 2 seconds ago are now outlines on the ground. People that passed you moments earlier have become smudges on walls, shadows of heat pressed into stone. And above it all, rising with unbearable calm, is the mushroom cloud. It billows slowly like ink spreading in water. It has no urgency, no emotion. It simply grows. Historians still disagree on the exact height it reached. Some say 40,000 feet, some say higher. But they all agree on this: it changed the shape of the sky, and you are still beneath it. There is no scream. You wait for one instinctively, expecting a city's cry, a single unified shriek of pain, but it never comes, only fragments. Someone coughs wet and deep. Someone else mutters a prayer, but forgets the words midway through. A baby's voice rises briefly, then disappears, and then just the wind. A different kind now. It smells of iron and salt and charred cotton. You're on your back. The sky above you is misshapen. Not dark, not bright, just wrong. It twists gently, as if made of cloth that's been torn and stitched back by blind hands. The mushroom cloud looms behind it, ascending with slow ritual grace, the way smoke curls from a censored incense offering, or a god no longer watching. You try to sit up. Your left hand doesn't move. The skin is cracked, blistered, peeling in long, rubbery strips like steam cloth. But the nerves are still alive, and that is somehow worse. Around you movement, barely. A man stumbles past. His clothes are intact, but his skin is not. His hair is gone. His arms hang outstretched not in supplication, but because his flesh has fused and stiffened in the heat. He says nothing, no moan, no scream. He walks on as if still en route to the office, as if not realizing his shadow is now painted on the wall he passed by. You smell him before you see the next one. A woman lies face down, dress burned into her back. Her legs are bare twisted. She still clutches a sandal in one hand. Her other arm ends in melted bone. But her body shields something small. You lean closer. It's a doll. One eye missing. The cloth singed. Its face turned away spared the heat for a second longer than its owner. The fires begin to take shape. Small ones first. Piles of wood debris, the paper screens of homes turn to cinder. Then larger ones, the firestorms travelling with wind that wasn't there 5 minutes ago, feeding on the open wounds of a wooden city. The temperature rises, not like summer, like a forge. You try to breathe, but the air is different now. Heavy. It drags your lungs down, laced with things that were once people, once buildings, now dust. And there, amid the smoke, a teacher. His shirt is gone. His glasses are fused into the flesh above his ears. His students follow him, or what's left of them. A line of children, hair burned away, mouths open. One girl clutches her own eye in her palm, gently, as if cradling something precious. They walk without direction. They are not running. This is what they call hikokai, the exposed ones. The survivors who emerged from the center. Not because they were strong, but because they were close enough that death missed them, briefly. You move past them. Your legs drag. The skin on your back feels split. Somewhere behind you, a structure collapses not from weight, but because its shadow was taken away. A dog barks once sharply. Then silence. You reach what used to be a tram station. The tracks are molten, coiled like intestines. A woman kneels beside them, rocking. Her face is untouched. Her kimono still has flowers, but her hands are black, dripping. She rocks slowly, rhythmically, saying the same word over and over. You can't understand it. She does not stop even as the heat from the track scorches the cloth beneath her knees. You feel watched, not by the living, not by the dead, by the city itself, as if the bones of Hiroshima are now sentient, aware of their exposure. Historians still wonder how long it took for the fires to burn out. Some say hours, some say days, but none dispute this: most of those who survived the blast did not survive the fire. You move toward water. Others do too. Figures stumbling, crawling, dragging what remains of their limbs. The river, brown and indifferent, has become a destination, a shrine, a grave. And as you reach its edge, you understand why. The fire cannot follow, not yet. The surface ripples, choked with ash and fabric. Bodies lie face down, arms still reaching. Some are alive, dipping blistered flesh into the shallows, hissing like iron dropped into tea. One boy, maybe 10 years old, presses his head beneath the surface and does not come up again. He does not flail. He chooses stillness. And you kneel at the edge, hands shaking, throat raw, eyes stinging. Not from grief, not yet. You are still too close to the light for grief. Instead, you feel something colder, resignation. This is not a nightmare. This is what happens when science forgets mercy. The color after light is gray, not ash gray, not sky gray, something else. Something that seeps into the lungs and dulls the mind. It clings to the skin, gets under the eyelids. You wipe your face and your hand comes away smeared with a paste of blood dust and things you cannot name. You have no shadow anymore. You don't remember when it disappeared, but it's gone. Everyone's is. The blast erased them shadows once etched in sunlight, now baked into pavement, fossilized as black outlines of where people once stood. They remain longer than the bodies do. You pass a wall. There on the stones a perfect silhouette of a man, arms raised, as if to shield his face. Nothing remains of him, just the imprint, as if the light had carved away everything but the memory of his refusal. Somewhere behind you, a woman screams. You turn too late. A building collapses inward. Its timbers moan before splitting like ribs. The smoke that rises smells like paint and hair. The woman's voice stops abruptly, replaced by the hiss of steam. It starts to rain. The droplets are large, heavy, irregular. They land with dull splats on the ground, on your arms, in your mouth. They are not clean. The rain is black, oily. It pools in the gutters, runs in rivulets down scorched walls. People open their mouths to it, desperate, not knowing that the water is poison, that it carries the city back down from the sky. One boy scoops it into a cracked bowl and offers it to a dying woman. She drinks. She says thank you. She dies with her hands still around the bowl. The funny truth, some survivors believed the rain would heal them, that it was divine, a cleansing storm. It took weeks for anyone to understand it was carrying radioactive soot, healing nothing, marking everyone. You crouch beneath a wrecked awning. The world is quieter now, but not empty. You hear fire crackling. You hear footsteps dragging across broken glass. You hear someone calling out names over and over, but no name is ever answered. A man sits nearby, his face turned to the sky, lips moving silently. He looks uninjured until you notice the deep red rings where his glasses once rested. His eyes have boiled away. He blinks anyway. He thinks he can still see. And then you notice it, the single most chilling fact of the morning. No birds. Not one. The sparrows that once filled the rooftops. The cranes that danced in the river shallows. Gone. Either burned, deafened, or fled before the silence broke. Whatever the cause, the sky is empty. You try to stand. Your muscles are slow. Your breath rattles. Every movement feels foreign, like your body is a borrowed relic refusing to obey. You are in every sense unraveling. A child crawls past you. His legs are gone below the knees, trailing smears of dark red and grey. He does not cry. He mouths a word, maybe mother, maybe water. But even those sounds are failing now. You pass him. You keep walking. You must keep walking, because the fires are not done, and the city does not yet know how to die. You step over corpses. Some still move. Some are too fused to the pavement to tell. You come upon a man digging with both hands through the rubble of what was once a house. His nails are gone. His palms are split open. He is trying to find someone. You do not ask who. Historians still debate the number. Some say 70,000 dead by the end of the day. Others raise it higher. But the number never mattered to those who walked these streets. Only the absences did. You pass a mirror. It leans cracked against a scorched frame. You glimpse yourself. Your hair is gone. Your face is no longer yours. Blistered, grey, covered in the dust of a civilization that forgot how to stop itself. You look away. A clock lies in the debris. Its hands are frozen at 8:15. Permanently. A symbol, you think. But then you realize all clocks in Hiroshima say 8:15 now. It is always 8:15 here. You walk toward what was once the center. There is no center anymore. only convergence of heat, of silence, of judgment. And there, in the ruin, stands a structure that somehow did not fall. The dome. Its iron ribs expose glass, shattered walls, buckled inward but still upright. Not alive, not intact, just enduring. It sees you. It sees everyone. The dome does not weep. It does not burn. It simply waits as if it always knew, as if it was built not to shelter, but to witness. And now it will remain long after the people it outlived are forgotten. You keep walking. There is no destination, only the ache of continuation. The river has changed. It is wider now, not because of rain or tide, but because of bodies so many that they shift in the current, displacing the water, giving it shape. Some float, face up, mouths open, as if still gasping for answers. Others sink slowly, tethered by what remains of their clothes or caught on drifting debris. You walk along the embankment, past lines of the burned and broken. They sit or lie in quiet procession, eyes closed, lips dry, waiting for something that will not arrive. A mother rocks an infant that no longer breathes. Her voice is flat, the melody hollow. She cradles the child as if warmth could return by will alone. Nearby, an elderly man is pulling a blanket over two figures. He smooths the edges with a trembling hand. He does not cry. He simply folds the corner over their feet, as if protecting them from a night that no longer exists. You hear someone calling for water. A hoarse whisper repeated over and over like a chant. You turn and realize it's a woman whose skin hangs in loose sheets. She has no ears left. Her eyes are swollen shut, but her mouth moves slow and steady like a wheel turning in dust. You bring her water. Black rain caught in a bent tin cup. She drinks. She sighs. She does not move again. This is not mercy. This is delay. Historians still argue whether the rivers saved lives that day or only prolonged suffering. Some jumped in to escape the firestorms only to be boiled alive when the heat caught them anyway. Others drowned too weak to hold themselves above the current. The water does not care. You step over a body half submerged in the mud. A teenage boy, his school uniform still clinging to his chest. There's something written on his sleeve, kanji stitched in careful thread. A name, a poem, you cannot read it now. The ink is gone. You follow a group of survivors moving silently toward a hill on the outskirts. It's not a shelter. There are no shelters, but instinct drives them higher, away from the heat, away from the blackened center. Each person limps alone, though they walk together. A man carries a door on his back, not a child, not a bag, just a scorched wooden door charred at the corners. Perhaps it's all that remains of his home. Perhaps it's his shield. Or perhaps he can't let go of the last thing that still held something closed. A woman drags a futon behind her. There's something wrapped in it, small, tightly bound, completely still. No one speaks. There is a silence now that goes beyond sound. It wraps around your bones, stiffens your spine. Even your thoughts feel slower, more brittle, like the moment you realize a fever has broken, but the sickness remains. And then a voice, clear, cold, commanding. A soldier, Japanese, mask over his face, barking instructions. He tells everyone to keep moving, to wait for assistance, to separate the living from the dead, but there is no assistance coming. The army is scattered. The hospitals are gone. The doctors, those who weren't incinerated, are wounded themselves performing surgeries with bare hands and no light. Gauze is rationed. Scalpels are reused. Painkillers are already a memory. And still the soldier shouts, as if noise might stop the sky from falling again. You pass a school. or what's left of one. Children's shoes line the steps. Some are upright, some not. A satchel is open, its contents spilled a pencil, a rice ball, a folded note from mother. No child in sight. You step inside. The roof is gone. Smoke trails up where beams used to be. Desks lie scattered. On the chalkboard, a lesson still waits kanji half erased mid-sentence. The teacher never finished it, but someone tried. A single character has been drawn in the lower corner, not by chalk, by a fingertip in soot. The meaning home. You leave. You find a man digging. He doesn't speak to you, but you watch. He uncovers a hand, charred fused to something else. He pauses, stares, covers it again. Some things should remain buried even now, and still the fires burn. Smoke has replaced the horizon. Sunlight filters through it in dull gold sheets. You cannot tell the time anymore. Hours pass like dreams. You move not because you have purpose, but because your legs do not yet understand what has happened. You pass someone vomiting. They are bleeding from the gums. Hair falling out, eyes glassy. Not from burns, from something else. The radiation. The part of the bomb that does not burn, that does not scream, that waits. A quiet, invisible sickness that climbs into the bones and unthreads them. Historians still wonder how many more would have survived had they not gone back to look for loved ones, had they not walked back toward the center, toward the crater of their own undoing. The answer is always the same. Too many. You sit at last beside a tree that should not be standing. Its bark is scorched, leaves gone, but it holds. And as you close your eyes, you begin to see shapes in the dark. Faces you passed, shadows that linger, a dome still upright, a clock still frozen, a handprint on stone, a cup left beside a sleeping child. You begin to forget your name. The city remembers it for you. You dream, but it is not rest. There are no soft places left in your mind, only ash, only echoes. The sound of paper catching fire. The silence after a scream. When you wake, your skin itches, not from dirt or heat or insect, but from the invisible. The parts of the bomb no one sees. The particles that settled on you like snow. The kind that melt not into water, but into marrow. Your nails are loose. Your gums bleed. Your mouth tastes of rust and old coins. Still you walk, because there is nothing else to do. By the 5th day the flies arrive, and with them disease. The corpses are too many. They line the roads, float in the river pile, in basements and schools and shrines. There is no time for ceremony, no incense, no prayers. Just mass graves dug with trembling hands, or no graves at all. Some volunteers wrap the bodies, most do not. One woman lays flowers by each face she covers. She runs out before noon. After that, she lays stones. You hear someone say it, "I survived." But their voice is empty. Survival is no longer a gift. It is a burden, a responsibility, a sentence. And you carry it now. You pass by the edge of the hypocenter again, or what used to be the center. It's hard to say. The landscape has no center anymore, just absence. The dome still stands, or part of it, metal ribs reaching toward a sky that has turned its back. Birds do not return here. Dogs have gone silent. You think about who you were before the blast. Were you a teacher, a baker, a mother, a student? Did you argue that morning? Did you eat breakfast? Did you love someone? It doesn't matter. The bomb didn't care. And now neither does the world. There are rumors that help is coming, food, medicine, people with clean hands and clean uniforms. You wait near the tracks where a train station used to be. A boy stands beside you. He's barefoot, holding a burned lunchbox. He does not speak. The metal of the tracks has curled. The signal lights hang crooked. There will be no train. Not here. Not again. A man hands you a piece of cloth. White. Rough. You realize it's the sleeve from a school uniform. He doesn't explain. He only points to the river and then walks away. You look at the cloth. There's writing on it. The characters are faint smudged by heat, but still legible. If I do not return, know I loved you. You do not cry. The tears do not come anymore. The city has taken even that. In time, people will return, rebuild, rename. There will be ceremonies, statues, memorials, apologies and denials. Pictures will be taken. Books will be written. Speeches will be given. Some will call it necessary. Others will call it unforgivable. But no one who stood in that silence that morning, that moment when the sun fell from the sky and the shadows burned themselves into stone, no one will ever forget. You are not a name in a textbook. You are not a number in a death toll. You are the silence that followed, the breath that never came, the heat that never left. You are Hiroshima. And even now, as time limps forward, as flowers bloom where nothing should have survived, the memory clings, not as horror, but as truth, unspoken, undeniable, unhealed. The world looks away, but you do not. You never will. Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. The earth is soft from rain, but the sky does not weep. Clouds hover low over Prussian soil, unmoving grey like ash smeared across glass. And below them, a man stands in white robes stitched with black crosses, issuing orders in a language no longer spoken in victory. His name is Ulrich von Jungingen. He is the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, and this is the last morning he will ever see. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep, best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time. And if you're still awake at the end, now exhale and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. You stand in the camp before dawn. Fires have burned low and men sharpen blades without speaking. You see fingers that have done this for 20 years trembling as if today is different. You walk past wagons heavy with weapons and hope. Polish scouts are not yet visible, but everyone knows they are coming. For weeks, the Order has been waiting to teach them a lesson in divine discipline. The battlefield is not in Jerusalem. It is not even near the Holy Land. You are in Grunwald, a field in the borderlands between Prussia and Poland. Lithuania green in the morning red before dusk. Ulrich adjusts his gloves. His hands are pale veined like paper but strong. He believes this is the day the world remembers why God once whispered only in Latin. He does not believe in defeat, only in delayed triumph. The Teutonic Order has never lost a battle of this scale. You are surrounded by 10,000 soldiers, German, Flemish, Czech, even English bound, not by land, but by oath. They wear crosses, but also coins. Many are paid, some will not be paid. You can already hear prayers to saints no one shares. In the center of the camp stands the great black cross banner of the Order, tall, stiff in the still wind. Its shadow stretches longer than the tents. It does not move. It only waits. A page rides in. A message. The Poles are near. So are the Lithuanians. But still no movement. For hours, both sides stare at each other across the field. Horses snort. Metal shifts. Nerves stretch. and the sun rises higher than it should. This is no ambush, this is theatre. Ulrich orders the priest to sing. Latin chorales spill into the air like perfume overwrought. He holds a reliquary in one hand and raises his sword with the other. He prays to a god who has already chosen sides. A hush falls. You feel it like a fog, not over the ground but inside your chest. You breathe, and the air doesn't come back out. The Grand Master mounts his white horse. You watch him ride the line. Soldiers kneel as he passes. Some wipe tears not from fear but from hope. They think this will be remembered for centuries. They are right, but not for the reasons they imagine. He halts at the front. Behind him, perfect rank steel, glinting like the eyes of angels. Before him, a tree line behind which no one knows how many wait. Maybe 20,000, maybe more. A single crow lands near the banner. It looks up once, then flies away. The sky stays still. This is the moment before history inhales. And the Grand Master speaks not a war cry but a quiet line from scripture. Not a shout but a whisper. Not to his men, to God. You do not remember the words, but you remember the way the wind moved not across the field but into your bones like the future had finally chosen its shape. And it was not a cross, it was a ditch. The Polish king sends emissaries, a strange move, almost theatrical. They offer a last chance for peace. Ulrich refuses. The gesture is a mockery. He sends them back with two swords, not as surrender, but as insult. You hear the silence swell. Then the hooves begin. The first arrow hasn't flown, but something has already ended. The first arrows fall like insects, thin, fast, venomous. You hear them before you see them, a dry hiss, a short thunk into shield or flesh. Men do not shout. They grunt. They stumble. They bleed from under helmets. One rider tries to raise his arm and can't. An arrow has pinned it to his ribs. The Grand Master does not flinch. He raises his hand. The knights advance. You feel the weight of history pressing down like a second layer of armor. You march, not because you believe, but because no one has ever told you what it feels like to retreat. The Teutonic line is perfect black crosses, shimmering white cloaks whipping behind war horses. It is beautiful. It is orderly. It is already doomed. The enemy is not. You see them now, Lithuanians first, fast and loud, spears held low, shouting in words your priest called pagan. They swarm the flank like dogs let loose at a funeral. Some of your men laugh. It is too early for fear. You break them, or so it seems. The Lithuanian cavalry scatter, retreating into the woods. Your line roars. The Grand Master believes it's a rout. It is not. It is bait. Now the Polish troops advance, and they do not scatter. They march under red banners with a white eagle, and you realize they are more numerous than you'd ever counted. For every one of you there are two of them, maybe three, and they know where to strike. Your right flank buckles first, not a break, but a bend like a knee about to fall. Then the center meets them. Steel against steel is not like thunder. It is not grand. It is jagged. It is screams interrupted. It is iron-splitting cartilage jawbone, the soft wet of necks. A knight beside you vomits in his helmet. You smell it before you see the blood. There is no silence now, only the grinding. The Grand Master charges into the heart of the melee. He does not wait for victory. He will meet it or die before it comes. You see his white cloak vanish into red, and then the Lithuanians return. From behind. Their retreat was a lie rehearsed with perfect cruelty. They close the trap. You are surrounded. Men begin to shout in every tongue. The Black Cross flags tear from their poles. You hear the word fall back, but there is nowhere to fall. This is no longer a battle. It is an unmaking. You try to stay with your unit, but the smoke splits everything. Someone strikes your shoulder. Your vision tilts. You stumble onto a corpse whose eyes are still moving. You press your blade into something that may have once been a soldier. He's not wearing your colors, or any colors. He's just red. And somewhere near the center, the Grand Master is still alive. You can't see him, but you hear his voice, not shouting orders, not calling prayers, whispering the same line, over and over, like he is reminding the sky of a promise it never made. A knight tries to flee. He makes it 6 steps before a peasant with a hammer cracks his back open like a chestnut. You do not flee. You do not move. The sun begins to fall. The battlefield, once green, now breathes red steam. The mud is half blood, half rain. A riderless horse gallops in a circle, dragging a legless man, still clutching the reins. And then you see him. The Grand Master dismounted his helmet, missing blood in both eyes. He raises his sword again. One final time. You know what happens next, and no one tells it the same way. Some say he was pulled down and stabbed in the throat. Others say he fought on foot until arrows nailed him into the earth. Some say he fell to a Lithuanian spear. Others whisper he tried to surrender. You don't believe that last one. Whatever the truth, his body is found hours later, face down, armor split bloodless, stripped of insignia, covered in dirt. But his hands are still clenched, around nothing. By dusk, the Teutonic Order no longer exists as it did that morning. 10,000 dead. So many nobles butchered that peasants stumble for days across the wreckage, robbing corpses too mangled to name. The Black Cross falls, and no one lifts it again. Your fingers are cracked. Your knees are wet. You don't know whether the warmth running down your chest is yours or someone else's. But you are alive, and that will not feel like a blessing for a long, long time. Calm. This was the Battle of Grunwald, July 15, 1410. The Teutonic Order never recovered. You return not as a knight, but as a whisper. No drums greet you at the gates. No crowds, no bells. Only the cold eyes of scribes who count survivors like debts unpaid. Out of 250 knights from your commandery, 7 return. You are the 8th. You don't correct them. The Order's halls, once so proud, feel hollow now. Not from damage, but from absence. The courtyards echo too much. The chapel smells like old wax and older grief. And everyone walks slower. Some speak of revenge. Most do not. You suspect even God has turned his face away, not out of rage but pity. The Grand Master's successor is crowned quietly like a formality. He avoids your gaze. Maybe he remembers your face from the battlefield. Maybe he just doesn't want to remember anything at all. You're given no assignment, no penance, no discharge. You're simply there. A knight without a war. A cross without a purpose. Some nights you clean your armor out of habit, then stare at it for hours wondering who it belonged to before you took it off that corpse. Others drink, others fast. You do neither. You sit in the scriptorium pretending to read, pretending the shaking in your hands is from the cold. It is not. Whispers pass between walls that the Order's lands are shrinking, that their Polish enemies are demanding tribute, that castles once built as signs of divine wrath are being sold stone by stone to pay debts. You think of the peasants who once bowed as you rode past. They bow no longer. They nod. That is worse. The Order survives, but it is no longer holy. It is administrative. You watch monks copy laws. You hear knights discussing land disputes. Someone tries to recruit fresh soldiers and fails. No one wants to wear the cross anymore. Not after Grunwald. They say the Polish king had the fallen Grand Master's body displayed for days, face up swordless, surrounded by trophies. Others say they buried him under his enemies. No version includes a prayer. You begin to dream of the battlefield, not of blood or screams, but of silence. Of that moment before the trap closed. Of the breeze, the trees, the illusion of control. You wake before the slaughter begins. Every time. You begin visiting the infirmary more often. Not because you're wounded, because you're the only one who still recognizes the men in the beds. The burn victims, the amputees. The ones who forgot how to speak. Some still wear their crosses. Others refuse. One afternoon, a boy no older than 16 is brought in. His legs are gone, his tongue partly severed. The scribe says he was a squire caught under a fallen horse and left overnight among corpses. He doesn't blink when you speak to him, but when you place your rosary in his hand, his fingers close around it, very gently. You leave the chapel that night and remove your cross, not in shame, but in mourning. There is a difference. One evening, an old knight approaches you in the courtyard. He fought beside your father, he says. He heard you stood your ground at the center. You do not answer. He hands you a scroll. It's a letter of reassignment, not to a battlefield, but a monastery in Livonia, far north. Cold, wet, mostly forgotten. Peaceful, he says. You nod, but you know the truth. They are sending you away to vanish with dignity. You pack only what matters, your blade, your cloak, your silence. You leave the rest behind. As the gates close behind you, you do not look back. The order is not dead, but something holier inside it is. The monastery is not what you expect. No high walls, no towers. Just stone buildings sunk into snowdrifts, their roofs groaning under winter's weight. The wind howls like it remembers warmer tongues. Here in Livonia, the wars feel like rumors. People do not speak of Grunwald. They speak of wolves, of spoiled grain, of a bishop who drowned in a well while drunk. God still lives here, but only barely, and mostly in superstition. Your new duties are simple copy manuscripts, tend the firewood, teach the local boys to read the Psalms. You are not required to wear your cross. The abbot says nothing about your past. That silence is a kindness. You sleep in a narrow cell beside the outer wall. At night, frost forms on the inside of your door. In the morning, the sun rises pale, and late, more like a memory than a promise. Your joints ache, your hair grays. The sword you brought remains wrapped in cloth beneath your cot. Sometimes you dream of the order's banners, but they're always burning. One day, while cataloguing old relics, you come across a locked chest. It's marked with the insignia of the Hochmeister, the old Grand Master. Dust coats the iron latch. The key has been missing for decades. You pry it open. Inside, wrapped in velvet, are three objects: a broken helm, a cracked bone cross, and a blood-stained map of Prussia. The ink has faded, but one phrase is still legible, written in trembling Latin. Our pride burned hotter than our faith. You do not tell the abbot. Instead, you rewrap the relics and bury the chest beneath the library floorboards. You say no prayer. You no longer believe they're needed for God to notice. In spring, a traveling priest from Rome visits. He speaks of the Council of Constance, of how the Church seeks to reform, of how the order is expected to modernize. You ask what that means. He says the knights will become landholders, bureaucrats, that vows of poverty may be revised, that the sword may finally be set aside. You ask what will happen to the relics, to the memory of sacrifice. He shrugs. History is inconvenient. You do not strike him. But you stand before the chapel door that night and watch your breath fog in the air like incense. You speak aloud for the first time in days. Not a prayer, a warning. To forget is to rot. Man, years pass. Quietly, you become the monastery's keeper of records. The boys you taught grow tall and leave. Few return. The world moves on more quickly than it should. Rumors filter in, the order has ceded more land. The old castles are being sold. The Black Cross, once feared, now adorns tax ledgers and wine labels. One letter unsigned says the Polish king visited Marienburg and laughed. You feel no rage, just the weight of dust. In your final years, you begin carving again, not weapons but wood blocks. Small images of the saints pressed into parchment and left in corners where no one looks. Your favorite is Saint Maurice the African knight, who refused to renounce his men even unto death. You carve his face with care. You press his image into the back cover of a forgotten chronicle. No one will find it for centuries, but it will wait, like you have. When your hands grow too weak to hold the quill, you write a final letter. Not to Rome, not to the Order, to no one in particular. I remember what steel felt like when it believed it served something more than ambition. I remember silence when silence was holy. I remember grief and the men who carried it without becoming it. If any of this survives, let it be known the sword was not the sin. Forgetting was. You fold the letter and place it beneath your old sword. You do not sign it. You do not sleep that night. You vanish some time before dawn, not with violence, not with ceremony, but like breath on glass. The monastery records your death as quiet without incident. It does not mention Grunwald. It does not mention that for years after strange visitors would ask after the night who watched the snow fall like falling banners. They are told there is no night here. You are no longer flesh. Your name has been struck from the rolls. Your deeds are lost in the margins of rewritten chronicles. Your sword, once sacred, has rusted into a hushed relic beneath monastery floorboards. But still something of you remains. You drift where the stones remember. Marienburg is no longer a fortress, not truly. The battlements crumble. The chapel reeks of wine and ink. Tax collectors now walk where war horses once stood. Your brothers' names are forgotten or mocked. Their banners hang in museums beside toys and trinkets. Their Latin oaths are mispronounced by tourists who smirk as they read. You pass unseen through the courtyard where knights once knelt in prayer before battle. Now bureaucrats bicker over tariffs. A boy drops a tin badge bearing the Teutonic Cross. It lies face down in the mud. No one picks it up. The Order is now a memory wearing a uniform, a ceremonial husk. But beneath the cellar, deep below the cobbled stones, something endures. There is a chamber few know. It was once a crypt, then a vault, then forgotten entirely. The stairs are worn from armored feet. The air still smells of wax and dried blood. Here you find them shelves of scrolls wrapped in oiled skins, each bearing names long erased from public record. You float past rusted reliquaries, bone fragments, crests blackened with age. At the center lies a stone basin. Its rim is notched with sword strokes. Its base is stained with ancient wine. Or something darker. It was once used for oaths, later for sacrifices of a quieter kind. You peer into its depths. Nothing stares back, and that is the worst of it. You remember when Marienburg first rose from swamp and ash, You remember hands raw from labor, voices hoarse with psalms. You remember the winter when the ice cracked and the bodies of drowned masons surfaced in the moat, their frozen eyes still open to heaven. You remember the girl who snuck into the courtyard to beg for bread, and how the knight who gave it to her vanished from record a week later. You remember the lies you told yourself to survive. You remember the absolutions bought in blood. You remember the fire. Turn. Later, when the Swedish army lay siege, Marienburg will burn. Cannons will shatter the walls. The chapel roof will collapse. The archives will smoulder until the ink runs like tears. But this chamber will remain. The flames will avoid it. Some places are too heavy for fire. Oh, Yigi. You dwell here now, not by duty, not by faith, but by something older. You are not alone. The dead do not speak. They sit in silence. Knights without names, scribes without eyes, priors who once believed that obedience could outweigh cruelty. Their presence is not warm, but neither is it malevolent, just watching, like old armor left in a corner still bearing the shape of the man who wore it. Years pass, decades. A scholar arrives trembling with excitement. He claims to be tracing spiritual lineages of discipline. He wears glasses too large for his face and carries a borrowed torch. He does not see you, but he shivers when he enters. He catalogues the scrolls, photographs the relics. His breath catches at the basin. He reads the inscription aloud, unsure of the Latin redimite vos metipsos ferro. Redeem yourselves by the sword. He smiles. He thinks it poetic. You do not smile. You know how it ended. You know what it cost. You know how long penance can take when silence is your only prayer. On his last night in Marienburg, the scholar hears footsteps echoing in the crypt after he's locked the door. He tells himself it's rats. He doesn't return. They seal the chamber again. You do not resist. Stone does not mind silence. Ashes do not fear darkness. And your story, like so many of the orders, is not lost, merely buried. Waiting. Waiting for someone to remember not the glory, not the failure, but the weight. The cold iron of belief pressed against a soul too tired to question. You were not always like this. There was once a morning. It smelled of thawing pine and horse sweat. A pale sun pushed through clouds like parchment. You knelt, young, eager, your hands trembling, as the Grand Master pressed a sword to each shoulder and uttered the words that reshaped your life. Milite Christi es. Arise. You are a soldier of Christ. Stand. You stood. And from that moment, you belonged to something older than your name, holier than your doubts. Or so you believed. That was your first mistake. Bekan, the war was never righteous, but it was well organized. For every heretic slain, a tithe was calculated. For every pagan village raised, a Latin letter of praise would arrive from Rome. Pilgrims arrived bearing gold. Merchants arrived bearing debt. You arrived bearing guilt. It grew heavier each year. Not all of you could carry it. Some drank. Some prayed until their tongues bled. Some buried things, documents, rumors, children. And one day, a knight whose name is no longer spoken did something worse. He told the truth. Charm, you remember the day of his sermon. It was meant to be routine. A liturgy before battle. But instead of verses, he gave the assembled knights something else. A whisper turned louder. Brothers, we were told we fight for God, but I have seen his silence. I have seen a child crushed under the hooves of a horse that bore the Holy Cross on its saddle. I have heard a priest bless a sword that cleaved an old woman in half. I have watched us salt the fields of the poor and call it penance. This is not redemption. This is decay dressed in ritual. Some knights turned away, others shouted. One wept. The Grand Master struck him down before the final line. Steel across neck. Silence across stone. Blood steaming in the frost. You did not speak. You did not move. You did not forget. And after the battle that followed, you were sent north a reassignment. No explanation. No trial. Punishment draped in duty. You were told to clear a monastery where monks had grown insolent. You arrived to find only smoke and frostbitten men whispering psalms to the wind. One monk had written, "Love is greater than iron" across the walls in ash. He was hanged by sunrise. You held the rope. You told yourself it was mercy. That was your second mistake. And the years that followed dissolved like wax in candlelight. You no longer prayed. You performed. You no longer believed. You obeyed. And obedience, you learned, is the final refuge of those too tired to think. But at night, in the dormitory, you recited the sermon under your breath. Not for others, for the stone, for yourself, for the God who never answered. Now centuries later you linger, not by choice. There is no judgment here, no wrathful hand dragging you down, only memory. Your blade, once polished to a mirror sheen, lies broken beside your forgotten name. The leather of your prayer book has rotted, but one page endures, the one where you copied that sermon line by line beneath a sketch of a blindfolded knight. Sometimes the wind in the crypt carries the faint sound of that voice again. Not yours, not his, something in between. A question repeated endlessly. Is faith still holy when it serves the unholy? You have no answer, but you repeat the question, because it's all that remains. Or outside the world moves on. Flags change, languages shift. Children laugh where gallows once stood, but the stones beneath remember. And sometimes when no one is watching, one stone beneath the chapel floor grows warm not with hellfire, but with memory. A sermon buried beneath centuries of silence refuses to be entirely forgotten. You are not a ghost. You are a question, and you wait. Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. You are standing where the trees thin and the track vanishes, just as it always did. But the Moonville Tunnel does not greet visitors. It absorbs them. The arch is choked with ivy now, its stonework cracked like a mouth too tired to close. The forest leans in, whispering the names of those it kept. There is no gate, no warning. Only the wind and the silence that presses back. You cross the threshold. They never told the whole truth about the land here, not in 1856, when the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad carved their way west. Not when they laid ties over graves older than any deed. This valley had been used for burials long before the white men arrived, and some say even the Shawnee gave it wide berth. Not out of fear, out of respect, or maybe resignation, but a line was needed, and the coal from Moonville had to get out somehow. The town would bloom briefly beside the rails, then rot just as fast. A single general store, a saloon, shacks with dirt floors, and the tunnel bored through the hill like a wound held open. They say it took 6 men to dig the first 10 feet. The rock was unstable, the slope uneven. Tools broke often. Lanterns flickered when no wind was present. 2 men died before the halfway point. One crushed under falling shale, the other of a fever that spread through the camp like punishment. He was buried in a shallow grave near the tree line, unnamed, unblessed. They worked over his body the next morning, dragging sleepers across his resting place. Time passed, and he was forgotten, mostly. But sometimes when you walk here now, when the air thickens and the birds go quiet, you feel that shallow dip beneath the track just to your right, like a breath waiting to rise. The tunnel was finished in haste. Winter came early that year. The bricks are poorly set in places, the arch incomplete. Yet trains rolled through anyway, day and night, coal heaped high in wooden cars. No matter the cost. The first accident came within a week. A young brakeman slipped while checking couplings and was pulled under. His body was recovered in sections. They laid him in a pine box near the old telegraph post, where the dirt turned to mud after every storm. That was the first marked grave. Grave but far from the last. Moonville itself never grew past 100 souls. By the 1880s, it was mostly a ghost town with living people in it. Men walked drunk down the tracks. Children crossed the rails to reach the schoolhouse and never made it home. It became common to hear of someone going under, and each time a cross appeared by the tunnel's mouth. Sometimes painted, sometimes carved into bark, sometimes not marked at all. The bricks inside the tunnel still bear names. Some old, some recent. You run your hand along the wall now. The moisture slicks your skin. T. Elwood, 1874 is scratched deep into the mortar, the letters uneven. He died in a collision. 2 engines met head-on in dense fog. The sound, they say, was not thunder, but something lower, like iron groaning in its sleep. Elwood's body was never found whole. They say he was thrown free, his legs one way, his eyes another. He had a family. They moved west. The tunnel remembers better than they do. You reach the halfway point now. There is no light behind you nor ahead, only the press of earth above your head and the silence of ground that never wanted to be disturbed. You stand still, letting the quiet expand. You think of how many feet walked these tracks, how many never walked back, and beneath it all, under the gravel and wood and history tree, the graves remain. Some bones collapsed into themselves. Others shifted from floods. At least one was exposed during maintenance in 1903. They say the crew chief ordered it covered up. The workers disagreed. They left that same day, said their tools had moved overnight, said something watched them, that the tunnel breathed. No report was filed, just a gap in the work schedule, and a replacement crew from Chillicothe silent and slow. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time, and if you're still awake at the end. Now exhale, and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. You move forward again, deeper into Moonville's mouth. The walls drip with old soot, and you swear the rail beneath your feet pulses once, like a memory still warm. And you remember this tunnel was not just carved. It was dug through things that didn't want to be moved, and they are not done shifting. You pause near a widening in the tunnel wall. The stones here look different, darker, older, not part of the original construction, as if something else had been buried first, and the tunnel was built through it like a careless scar. You place your hand on one of the stones. It's colder than the others, almost wet. But when you pull your fingers back, they're dry. In the early 1890s, the accidents stopped making the papers, not because they stopped happening, because they were no longer surprising. A conductor lost between shifts. A child dragged 50 feet after falling from a coal hopper. A woman found wandering the tracks barefoot, unable to speak. The papers printed warnings. The railroad denied responsibility, and the deaths kept coming. Local law began to crystallize. You would have heard the stories even then, whispers over cheap whiskey in the Moonville saloon. Don't whistle in the tunnel. Don't look back if you hear footsteps behind you. And if the lantern flickers, drop everything and run. Because sometimes it isn't wind. Sometimes it's him. The locals called him the brakeman. Others said the lantern man. The version changes, but always ends the same, a figure with no face holding a swinging light. He appears in the center of the tunnel, too fast to stop, for too solid to be smoke. Engineers saw him seconds before impact. By then, the brakes were useless. You picture it now, standing where you are, just a flicker of orange light far ahead. Too small to be a person. Too steady to be a flame. The kind of glow that doesn't illuminate, only watches. They say he was a real man once. A railroad worker who fell asleep on the tracks. Or a gambler who got pushed. Or a father searching for his lost daughter and caught under a passing freight. The details shift, but always he dies here, and always he comes back looking for his head or yours. One autumn night in 1895, the train from Athens came through just past midnight. The crew reported no issues, but the fireman never made it to the next station. His seat was empty, his gloves still warm. The logs showed no stop, no delay. They found his cap at the tunnel's exit 3 days later, neatly folded, tucked inside the hollow of a tree, like it had been returned. Moonville's population shrank to double digits, then single. By 1900, the mine was dry, the store boarded up, the saloon burned down mysteriously twice. The last residents left quietly, some in wagons, others on foot. No farewell, just absence, like breath exhaled and never drawn back in. But the tunnel never emptied. Kids came back in the 1930s, daring each other to walk its length at night. Sometimes they returned, sometimes they didn't. One boy in 1938 was found curled in the center, eyes wide, body cold. No bruises, no cuts. His friends swore they'd only lost sight of him for a minute. They shut the line down in 1947. Too many derailments, too little profit. Nature rushed in to reclaim what it had always owned. The rails rusted, the ties rotted, and the tunnel remained. Even now, your breath echoes oddly here. Not forward, not back, as if the sound moves sideways or stays still. You glance up. The ceiling arches into black. Water drips intermittently like a clock without rhythm. The darkness here doesn't recede, it thickens. You begin to understand why no one lingers, why even thrill seekers leave before the fog rises. There's a side chamber to your left, barely visible, cut into the stone. Not part of the railroad plans. Just a hollow perhaps for tools or shelter, or something older. You edge toward it, but something in your ribs tightens. Not fear, not quite. More like recognition. The way a deer lifts its head before it runs. Inside you see scratches on the far wall. Not graffiti, not initials. These are symbols, repeated spirals. Slashes, a crude eye shape gouged deep. You reach forward and your skin prickles. A draft escapes from within, though the hollow is sealed. And in that second, you hear it. Not footsteps, not voices. Something like a breath drawn through teeth. A sound that shouldn't echo in stone. And then it's gone. You step back. Your foot lands on old gravel, and for just a moment, it shifts too much, like there's nothing solid beneath. You move fast now, back toward the main path. The wall beside you seems to hum. Your pulse matches it. Moonville had one last death, at least the last officially recorded one, 1906. A man from Columbus up here on a dare. He made it halfway through the tunnel, called out for his friends, and then screamed. They found him near the exit. No blood, no wounds. His hair had turned white. His mouth was open, frozen. They blamed a heart attack, but the locals still call it the tunnel's toll. And you are nearly at the end now. You see the light again, natural light, pale and dusty like something unused to shining. The forest reappears. Trees older than memory lean away from the path. You are out. But the tunnel is not done with you. Behind you something shifts. Not a sound, a silence breaking. You don't turn around, because turning around is what they want. The legends say that once you acknowledge what's behind you, it follows, that it can't move unless it's seen, like a shadow that only becomes real when lit. But you've come this far. You keep walking. The dirt path past the tunnel is softer now. Leaves muffle your steps, but the pressure in your spine remains as if some part of the tunnel stepped out with you. Not a ghost, not a memory, just the presence of something old and watching. Locals never built near the tunnel, even when land was cheap, even when timber was free. This clearing, flat, fertile, close to water, remained untouched, not by superstition, but by instinct. The deer didn't graze here. Birds flew above it, and no one ever camped nearby twice. The trees grow in a circle here, a little too perfect, a little too still. Some say it's where they buried the miners who died in the first collapse, those whose names never made the records. Others say it's where the railroad burned bodies after accidents to avoid lawsuits. No bones were ever found. But then again, no one has really looked. In 1983, a group of paranormal investigators came to Moonville. They brought cameras, meters, and confidence. They joked on the first night, drank on the second. By the third, their batteries failed. Not just drained fried, melted internally. The trees around the tunnel turned black at the tips, as if singed by lightning. But the sky had been clear. Their lead researcher left a note in the local library's guest book before leaving town. Just one line. Some things want to be forgotten, but they don't like being disturbed. Since then, others have come and gone. Urban explorers, ghost hunters, TikTok thrill chasers. Most leave with shaky footage and empty claims, but a few don't leave anything at all. In 2007, a college student vanished here. They found her car by the trail. Her phone was recovered on a rock near the tunnel entrance. It was still recording. The footage is grainy wind trees, laughter, and then suddenly silence. A metallic clang like a chain dragged across stone. And just before the video cuts out, a whisper, almost too faint to hear. Help me remember. You reach a crooked fence now, rotted and grey, barely holding itself upright. Behind it, the cemetery, or what remains of it. 6 marked stones between unmarked mounds, and in the centre, a larger monument long since toppled. The carvings have worn away except one, a half-circle chipped on one side. A moon, perhaps, or an eye not fully open. You kneel beside one of the nameless graves. The earth is uneven, sagged inward like the body underneath pulled away deeper. A faint indent remains in the center, almost like a handprint, and for a moment the air smells different. Not decay, not mold. Smoke. You stand too quickly and the world blurs. Not because of fear, but because something in the air shifts, like the ground inhaled through its roots. Behind you, the tunnel mouth remains visible between the trees, but it looks smaller now, sunken, like it's trying to pull away from light. The first official report of the Moonville Sound came in 1992. A park ranger walking the trail heard a voice. No one else around. Clear, male, insistent. You were here before. He searched the area, found nothing. No animals, no people, no footprints but his. He submitted the incident, took early retirement 6 weeks later, and never returned. What unsettled him most, he wrote, wasn't the voice. It was the feeling that the ground recognized him. You know that feeling now. Your boots, your breath, the warmth of your blood all feel too known here. Like the tunnel is remembering through you, not watching you, but watching with you, as if your eyes now see double your vision and something else's memory. They say trauma leaves echoes. But what if those echoes become aware? What if beneath places like this old mines collapsed, towns haunted tunnels? There's something deeper than ghosts, not people, not spirits, but places themselves that remember, and eventually start asking questions. The tunnel wasn't just cursed, it wasn't just haunted, it was injured, and it healed wrong. The path turns again. You're now on the far side of the hill, where the second entrance to the tunnel used to be. The stone archway collapsed years ago, but the outline remains half submerged in dirt and moss, like a mouth forced shut. You see names carved into a nearby oak. Deep gouges decades old, some readable, some clawed over. One in particular catches your eye. Cease Mayfield. I'm still in there. In 1949, that name doesn't appear in any census. Not in train records, not on missing persons lists. And yet, you know that name. Not from reading, from being here. A wind moves through the leaves. Not across, but through, like breath through a hollow chest. It doesn't chill you, it stills you. And in that moment you realize the tunnel is not empty. It never was. It just waits. Waits for you to leave, to remember, to ridden. And once you've entered, part of you never leaves. The air grows colder as you trace the tunnel's narrowing throat. You no longer need to imagine the darkness pressing on your shoulders, it now does. You feel it weighty as if you're being tested for belonging. If you were born here, you might pass. But you're not. You're only visiting. And the tunnel knows. In 1890, a man named Frank Lawton, railway fireman, was seen walking into the Moonville Tunnel alone after dusk. He was never seen walking out. Only his lantern was recovered still lit, its small flame burning in the center of the tracks. They said he tripped. They said the train wheels took his body clean in half. But the conductor swore under oath that no train passed that night. You can almost hear the scraping now. Not of feet, but of metal on stone. A kind of dragging. The kind a broken limb might make if it refused to stop moving. The tunnel's construction is basic, a bored hole through sandstone, supported by dry laid stone blocks. It shouldn't hold sound so well, and yet each breath you exhale returns seconds later like it's been thinking things over, and it always comes back colder. As you press on, you spot an old niche carved into the wall, not part of the original plans. Locals called it the cradle. A small indent in the stone, barely wide enough for a curled body. It's where people say a runaway hid during a blizzard and never left. The imprint of their knees still scuffed the stone even decades later. The surface never dried. It still doesn't. Some say the tunnel was cursed from the start. It bisected sacred ground used by the Shawnee for seasonal rites. Others blame the railroad company's haste cutting through unstable ground, refusing to pay for reinforcing timber. The truth is likely both insult and indifference woven into one stretch of track. The modern park signs outside the tunnel, warn of steep drop-offs and unstable footing. But inside, the only danger is time. It doesn't move forward here. It coils, and it waits. You pass through a coal patch no wider than a doorway. Your skin reacts before your thoughts do. Something brushed by. and now you're on the other side of the patch, and nothing has followed. But the tunnel isn't behind you yet. Historians still argue about the 1923 cave-in. Some say it never happened, that the collapsed stone was placed deliberately. Others believe something from below, shale or gas or pressure, forced the rock upward, snapping the line for months. But no repair logs exist, no damage records, just the stones themselves buckled in unnatural angles, as if the tunnel rejected its own center. Railroad crews reported hearing knocking sounds from beneath the tracks that year. Not from above, not from within the walls, but from below. Morse code rhythms, please warnings, echoes, nobody knows. And when a man tried to transcribe them, he vanished from his cabin the next day. Coffee still hot on his desk. You stop here, because the far end of the tunnel is now visible. A small mouth of dust blue light, but it isn't welcoming. It's narrower than you remember, and it isn't empty. There's a figure standing just to the side, lantern in hand, flame steady. You'd almost call it calm, except you now realize it isn't casting a shadow. You take another step forward. The flame flutters and dies. You do not run. That would break the rules, unwritten, unspoken, but deeply felt. In Moonville Tunnel, you do not run. You keep walking one foot precisely after the other. You keep your breath steady. And above all, you do not look back, because whatever is behind you now is no longer bound to stone. The figure at the far end shifts, not closer, not further, just clearer. The lantern it holds does not reignite, but its absence of light reveals more than flame ever could. A long coat hangs from its shoulders, civilian cut, not uniform. Its boots are railroad issue, year stamped on the sole. And the neck leans slightly unnaturally, like it gave up holding the weight of a head long ago. Some say this is the Moonville brakeman. Others say it's the ghost of the telegraph boy who was sent to deliver a message in the storm and never arrived. Others still believe it's not a ghost at all, but something the tunnel itself produced, as if old grief and buried ore could ferment and grow limbs. In 1960, paranormal investigator named Grace Morley recorded audio inside the tunnel. 17 minutes of humming tones and shifting frequencies, with one distinct human voice whispering just 2 words, "You're late." The recorder melted in her car trunk the next day. Melted, not burned. Locals say the figure appears only on moonless nights, when the air sits wrong and the tunnel floor seems to curve. But the date doesn't matter. Not really. It appears when you need it to, or when it needs you. You notice something odd now. The tunnel mouth ahead is not getting larger as you walk. Perspective has failed you. You should be close enough to see brush and gravel and the forest beyond. But instead, it's like the light is inside a painting, and the painting is retreating. You turn your head slightly, just enough to catch the tunnel wall beside you. But there is no wall. It's gone. You reach out. Your fingers meet air, then cold, and behind the cold stone, wet crumbling deeper than it should be. You pull your hand back and your fingers come away with red dust. It smells like rust, but you didn't touch any metal. The tunnel is changing, not collapsing, morphing, like it's shifting back to the shape it once knew before men forced it open. It's erasing you, from maps, from time, from consequence, and then from behind you a sound. Footsteps, no boots on grit, but heavier than human weight. Too slow for a man, too regular for an animal, like a machine built to imitate walking but without understanding it. It stops. A voice lantern, just that one word, sharp, low, carried on no breath. then silence. You've made it halfway through, and that's the dangerous part. It always is. The tunnel only takes what steps inside, but it keeps what hesitates. You do not hesitate, you walk on. And now the mouth of the tunnel seems closer. Or maybe it's only that the darkness behind you is no longer content to wait. You can feel it pressing now, not following but folding in. The air thickens. The scent sharpens. Like cold stone soaked in history that refuses to rot. You know without knowing how that no train has passed through this tunnel since 1986. But you also know one is coming now. You hear it distant, impossible, rhythmic. Steel wheels without steel rails. A phantom engine that obeys no schedule. It's coming for you, and your only chance is to reach the end before it does. You see the end now, the tunnel mouth, a jagged ellipse of pale light. But it isn't the same mouth you entered from. That one was cracked sandstone and ivy. This one is bare raw stone ringed in char like it was carved out by a fire. There are no trees outside, no wind, no moon, just stillness. Behind you, the sound of the train grows, but it does not echo. It resonates, like it's not in the tunnel with you, but in your chest, your skull, your memories. Like every regret you buried is riding that train. And its whistle, if that's what it is, doesn't scream. It moans, long, low, and inhuman. You're 20 steps away, but you're not sure anymore if it's light at the end, or something far worse pretending to be. You cross the threshold, and everything stops. No more footsteps, no more train, no more sound. You turn around slowly. The tunnel is gone. Not blocked, not collapsed, gone. Behind you a dense wall of trees, birch and pine. No stones, no tracks, no sign that anything was ever built there. And your watch, it reads 4:18 a.m. Same time it did when you stepped in. Exactly. You walk back to the path. The gravel feels different underfoot, loose, unused. You glance down, and you see it. A rusted lantern, lying on its side in the brush. Its glass is cracked. Its handle is broken, but its wick is warm. The Moonville Tunnel doesn't exist on modern maps. The railway was dismantled. The company dissolved. The miners are buried. The trains are dust. But the path remains. And sometimes on moonless nights so do the echoes. They say the tunnel took lives. That's true. They say it takes more than that now. That's also true. But what they rarely say, what you now know, is that the tunnel doesn't haunt. It remembers every step, every secret, every trespass. And now it remembers you. You return to your shack. You lock the door. You sit down at your desk, and you do the only thing a good foreman can do. You write down the names. No one will read them, but they must be written, because what is remembered, Bedtime does not rot.